Because you can never tell nowadays. Let me just refresh the stream really quick. And we are live. All right, cool.
We are live. Yep.
Even
Yay!
Woohoo! We did it. You know, it took some time, but we are finally here using Be Live tonight. Hello, everyone, and welcome to OWL by the Numbers. I am your host, Totally Drunk. And before we get into the news tonight and introduce you to my co-host, I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who is hanging out with us tonight on Twitch for our live show. And of course, thank all of our repeat listeners out there. Tonight on episode 2, we'll be discussing the launch of High Noon Fantasy, which is right around the corner. We'll also be continuing our top 5 rankings between our hosts when it comes to both support players and DPS players. As you can see, everyone is back yet again after our Twitch debut last Tuesday night. And joining me tonight are my co-hosts. Back with me yet again are Blazing Bob, Edinar, and Ramses. And Bob, you know, I know things didn't quite go as well for you guys in the Watchers Brawl. Unfortunately, you guys lost in that lower bracket.
Yeah,
but
it was a bummer.
You know, things happen, you're looking to rebound, and there's always next month. But how has this past week been treating you, my friend?
It's been okay. I played a lot of Overwatch, just getting ready for the tournament, and still haven't placed my main. I should probably do that before the season ends, so I don't take that little cut in SR. But I just don't want to play my main right now. Like I'm a little scared with the patch changes and what that's going to be like playing in the higher elo. So I'm trying to get used to everything in plat, and then I'll probably do my placements next week.
Yeah, it's crazy because, like, kind of going into all of the stuff that went on to live, we didn't quite really know how things were going to shake up in the meta, but it's been pretty different compared to what we're used to because tanks are just not surviving or being able to, you know, stay alive.
And according to Overbuff, I guess Reaper's up from a 1.3% pick rate to a 5%.
Somebody call the police. Reaper's getting played.
Man. And that's outside of just, you know, point B on assault maps, too.
The point A now, too.
That's crazy. Now he's played on both objectives. But next up, we have my co-host from Heroes Never Die, who is in the middle of the Arctic chill here in the Midwest along with me, but he's getting the brunt of it today. Edinar, how are you doing today? Hopefully, you know, you're staying warm, plenty of whiskey at hand.
Holy crap on a cracker. Like, the weather in Wisconsin right now is insane. So tomorrow is actually the cold day. We have a high or a low of -30. That's without wind chill. And then it's supposed to be -60 with wind chill. I don't know if my car is going to start in the morning, and I kind of hope it doesn't, because then I don't have to go to work. And then I can level up my horrible DPS account in Overwatch, which I have been playing with Spider. Totem decided to ignore us because he had to watch the Royal Rumble. You know, but, you know, we've been having fun. I've been enjoying leveling up my DPS account. I have noticed a tad bit more toxicity in the lower ranks now, because now the game's permanently half off. So you're starting to see more and more Smurf accounts talking trash. But so I've been playing a lot of Overwatch. I've been playing a lot of Destiny. I'm really enjoying the end game on that. It's getting my Warcraft fix out of the way, playing Destiny. So I've been enjoying it. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun, staying warm. Might start a small fire in my apartment tomorrow. I don't know. I may need to stay warm.
Absolutely. And, you know, unfortunately, I have to work both the next 2 days when we are getting that really bad weather. I'm sure the business is going to be absolutely dead, and I'm still going to be stuck there, unfortunately. But joining us tonight again is our other co-host, Ramses, or Julian Goulian, you know, depending on what he's going by this week. Has there been any definitive answer yet? Have you, you know, drawn out and figured out this dilemma that you're going through?
Well, first off, let me say it's a pleasure to come here from beautiful Southern California. The 70-degree weather today was wonderful. Didn't even have to wear a sweater. It was perfect.
I hope you burn in hell.
Oh, when the summer comes, I will. We'll get there. But things have been good. A lot of the push I've gotten from, I guess, from friends has been to keep the name to go with Ramses, but I don't know. I just don't know. I'm down theoretically. I just don't know if I can carry the mantle of that, I guess. But stuff's been pretty good. Going back into Phantom Pain because my internet's been spotty. So back into Phantom Pain, enjoying how good that game has been, watching a lot of JoJo's, trying to get my account back to where I feel good with it, back in, mid to high plat. So it's been good. Lots of progress.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and let's jump into this week's news. And first up, we do know that we finally have a launch date for our friends over at highnoon.gg. So, Bob, when can we expect fantasy leagues to go live through High Noon?
Highnoon.gg fantasy
Get out of the way early. Like, it's good.
Fantasy launch is set for February 4th. You can run practice drafts now if you sign up for their alpha. We'll have that in the show notes where to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then next Tuesday night, we'll have a very special guest. We'll have the creator, Matt, also known as Soul Drink, creator of highnoon.gg. So I'm excited to meet him myself because I've talked to him many times over text format, but now I'm going to get to talk to him live. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. It's going to be a little bit different if we are going to use BeatLife next week, just because we are already at the, the 4 guest limits. So if we do bring Matt in, we'll probably have to rotate some of the hosts around, which would be a little bit more work on my end, but that is not too bad. But anyways, so, with Matt coming on the show next week, it's going to basically coincide with the launch of their service, which will be the day before we record our podcast. So if you guys have any sort of questions that you would like to ask Matt, be sure that you have them handy for next week's recording, and we will have him answer them live on the show, because I know a lot of people still aren't aware that, there is an alternative outside of Winston's Lab. So we are here to spread the word. And of course, highnoon.gg is who we have partnered with. So I greatly look forward to next Tuesday night. But Ed, you and I actually, we were trying to figure out, okay, well, how's this draft actually going to work? We were just trying to piece together, a couple of people to actually do an alpha draft. And it just, we didn't get that many bites, so you and I were just digging around, just the two of us in an alpha draft, which was pretty interesting. So why don't you maybe share some of your takeaways that we had during our little test phase there?
So, by the way, in a 2-person league, you get really stacked teams. Just throwing that out there. Head to head, you're going to have a great team. But, it was... When we drafted, I think we kind of both had fairly similar mindsets, taking, not main tanks as our tanks, not tanking, mercy mains as our main supports, all that stuff. Overall, like the actual draft part of it was pretty smooth. It's very self-explanatory. I mean, there are little tweaks here and there down the road that I think that they could make a change for, and it really make a difference. Like the main thing for me was if it had a queue system, like you could put a queue system up there and be like, okay, this is who I want to draft next. But other than that, the actual the draft room was very smooth, very well done. It reminded me, honestly, of an ESPN draft site. So overall, super kudos to highnoon.gg for all of that. I'll praise Matt a little bit, but it was overall a lot of fun. I feel in our 2-person league, I will destroy you, Totem, because you know what, you took. All right, I have our actual lineups here. So with the first pick, I take Jonak. Obvious. First pick every league. You went Fury, fine. I'll take Space as my number 2. But we went back and forth. Jonak Fury, Space Pedosian, Carpe Prophet, Fissure, Mecco. I went Shaz. You went Twilight. I'm going to take Shaz over Twilight.
I have a question though.
Yes. What's your question?
How cool was it to actually have a draft room? Because last year we actually had to, for the high noon draft, we actually had to do a thing where we had a spreadsheet where we actually drafted live. We filled the names in, and then everybody had to make their draft rankings exactly what their guys were. God. All 10 had to do it separately. Like a commissioner couldn't just put them in. So we literally had to set them all, and then we had to set the draft, and then it just went and actually drafted the order we took it in.
Yeah, no, the actual feel of the draft and the draft room and itself was amazing. And it's going to be, you're going to see it when we do our live draft on February 8th. Not trying to toot our own horn. But when we do our live draft on February 8th with all the other podcasters, it's going to be amazing because we're going to stream it live and you're going to be able to see the draft room and how smooth it is and how easily it is to have 12 people in the league and drafting, and you're going to see who's going to be drafting who. You're going to see who's on the clock. You're going to see who just got taken, who the previous 5, 6, 7 draft picks are.
You get me excited.
I'm so excited for this. Fantasy is all about, to me, the draft is the most important part of a fantasy league. If you don't have a good draft, any of you,
and you got to have friends, you got to hang out. Even if you're not there, you got to be in Discord. I mean, that's what it's all about. Is that first thing, a trash talking, guys, during the draft? Trash talk.
I trash talk with the best of them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know Blevins and Deathblow may harass me for making fun of them from being close to Canada, but you know what? It's a disadvantage they have. I have nothing to quantify why it's a disadvantage. Mm-hmm. It just is.
I mean, they have the CFL. I mean, that's not even actual football.
Yeah, it's not real football. You can't. What do you have? A CFL fantasy team? Weak sauce. So, I enjoy my trash talking. Even if I'm in last place, I will trash talk the hell out of you.
Yeah, you know what's funny, too? Because, on Sunday, before we were watching the pay-per-view, I actually sat down and interviewed Clay and Ryan from the Birdwatchers, who are also part of our Fantasy Showdown. So the animosity, pre-recorded was definitely there. It's just I had to compose myself when we were actually doing the interview. But as soon as it was over, it was on like Donkey Kong. And I can't wait for next Friday. And Ramses, I know you're looking forward to it too. Have you been mapping out, maybe some pre-draft rankings or anything like that ahead of the big day?
I've been thinking about just looking at different tier lists, analyzing with my own. I think I'm going to go in with just one strategy here, which is just capitalize on Ed's mistakes. And so,
cross co-host trash talk. I like it. I like it. Except you're wearing a Houston Outlaw shirt, so I automatically know you're going to draft a crap team. You're going to be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take Raucus in the second round. Well, good luck with that, because he sucks.
I bet Raucus is on his top 5 list, too.
Oh, guaranteed.
You have to take a homer, and he's not going to take.
All right, in your top 5 list between tanks, DPS, and support, how many of them play for the Houston Crapflaws?
I'm going to say a grand total of 0. Mumo is number 6 on my tank line. It's number 6.
All right. We'll see if that holds up. I mean, if you make the playoffs, you're slightly better than the actual team.
Look, I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it. When we end the season above Dallas again, then we can talk about it.
You're not going to get it.
I'm sorry about
Dallas. Dallas is the dumpster fire, and Houston Outlaws is the match.
He was a Mayhem fan last year, by the way.
No, I was a Mayhem fan. That was horrible.
He was the gasoline to that fire.
Florida Mayhem was mayhem. I'm going to stick with the Hanzo Spark this year until we get a Chicago team next year, and then once we get a Chicago team, you're never going to hear the end of it.
All right, I can't wait to see you in pink.
You know what? As soon as I can order their jerseys, I'm ordering one. So,
so am I, but it's for Mel.
Ed, how tired is Space's back going to be when he has to carry all of that entire team behind him to barely struggle into 12th place this year?
I mean, how bad is... Wait, no, there's nobody on the Outlaw teams that can carry anyone. Sorry. I mean, you're
Linkser, come on.
Yeah,
Mr. Dinkser? I'm sorry?
I said Linkser.
Mr. Dinkser?
Oh, I get what you're going with that.
If Widowmaker was in the meta, Linkser would be, a good choice. But Widowmaker is not. Thus,
but Ash
Linkser
just might be.
Ash just might be, but who knows that if Lynx is going to play Ash? I mean, I might
do.
have Dante in there.
Literally any sniper.
I don't know.
Dante will be on Sombra.
I mean, knowing the Houston Outlaws, they're going to test out Jake on it.
Ed,
that's a good point right there.
Ed,
I can't argue with that.
Before the season starts, Ed, you and I have to make some sort of bet about this.
I will make any bet. I will make any bet. And it's always going to be for a skin. If you want to make a bet with me on a skin, I will make that bet with you.
That sounds totally good. I'm down for that.
All right. Fair enough. All right.
All right. Well, while we all bicker about who's the worst team in Texas, let's see whether or not we are all on the same page when it comes to our top 5 fantasy rankings. And first up, we'll be talking about support players in the Overwatch League. So I have to say, looking back at in our draft, we were definitely favoring flex supports over main supports. So why don't you start us off with your top 5 fantasy rankings for the support players going into season 2?
Yeah, like you said, we were definitely favoring the Zenyatta aspect of it. So I will go with number 1. Obviously, it's going to be if it's not your number 1, you're doing it wrong. It's Jonak. Jonak is number 1, probably on everyone's
5 though.
What's that?
You're starting at 5 though.
Oh, I'm starting at 5. All right. I'll start at 5. So number 5 is my sleeper, and he's not so much a sleeper. I'm going Ryu Jae-hong.
I thought you were going to say Sleepy.
No. I'm not going Sleepy. I thought about it. He's on my list, but Ryu Jae-hong is my number 5 just because he's so skilled, and Anna is somewhat in the meta, like a little bit in the meta, that I think Ryu Jae-hong is going to be a difference maker. Number 4, I did not take anyone from the Spark. I took someone from the, Angry Yetis, and I went Twilight is my number 4 support. Number 3, I actually took Shaz.
Shaz. Yeah, I was going to say, you got your players
Shaz.
Mixed up there.
And this is when I hit my Frager aspect of my support. So Shaz is going to be my number 3. Number 2, Badosin. Number 1, Jonak. I think Jonak and Badosin are going to be 1 and 2 for most people. It's just one of those things that's going to happen. And 3, 4, and 5 are going to be fluctuated. But yeah, so Ryu Jae-hong, Twilight, Shaz, Badosin, Jonak.
All right.
In reverse order.
Yeah, going for 5 to 1. Bob, why don't you go next with your top 5?
All right. Well, so I, of course, took all Mercy mains because that's just how you roll when you're Bob.
Mel, did you do it?
Pre-planning.
No, I took. Although I do think people who swap to Anna are going to be pretty good because that nade's going to rack up for a lot of extra E limbs. But that being said, I went Kareev as number 5. My homer pick is Unko at number 4. Number 3, I picked. But do you remember Unko playing in stage 4?
I'm not even going to go there. You know what? I will give you Unko in the draft.
All right. Then 3, I went Badosin. 2, I went Boombox. You just totally forgot about him. And then number 1, I went Jonak, of course.
I am shocked.
So, Bob, my only question is, didn't we just hear that Kareev is not going to be a support player anymore, though?
Nope. We did hear that, but then he came back and said that he still wanted to play off support.
But will Overwatch website count him as support? That's the big
good
thing.
point. Good point.
If they don't, then he won't qualify at highnoon.gg. And I did not forget about Boombox. I have zero faith in the Philadelphia Fusion.
Oh my gosh.
For me, it's not so much I don't have faith. I do think Boombox is a little overrated, and there are a ton of fraggers coming into the league this season.
Yeah. And I just don't like the Fusion.
Okay, and a lot of what I picked is I'd feel that these are going to be starters playing every game, and that was a big that was a big point to choose too. So I picked all established teams and ones that, like, I would not recommend picking people from expansion teams early on, just because you just don't know who's going to play and who's not. I mean, you really don't. We had so many things in season 1 where we thought this player was for sure going to play, like Shadowbird. And yeah, then he got benched and never came back, for 3 stages.
Yep. No, I completely agree. The only reason I added someone from Vancouver is they came in as a whole team. So you know who's going to be playing on that team because they played together for so long. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Sometimes you just have to take the most, the person who's going to be in there at all times. That's why I actually had Custa as my number 6 for that exact reason. Like, Custa may not be someone who's going to pump out all the fantasy numbers, but he's going to be in every map no matter what, because he's the
shot caller.
He's a shot caller. He's the only main healer that's on the LA Valiant. So it's someone like that who you can count on to be. They won't be the highest earner on your team, the highest scorer, but they're going to be the backbone of your team because they're going to be the most consistent. And sometimes you actually need that. And when you get into these 12-person leagues, someone like that is huge. Like, when you talk about fantasy football, you look at running backs. If you look at running backs who have no backups, like no good backups, so if they don't have a good backup in fantasy football, they're going to automatically get drafted a little higher because they have no competition. Well, Custa has 0 competition for the shot caller and the main healer role. So, there is 0 chance Custa is not in every map for the entire stage or entire season. So, that is a smart choice. I will give you that. I don't know about Boombox, though.
But I'm curious what Ramses has.
Well, they got rid of Dayfly, correct? So I don't think there is anybody to back up unless Elk is going to shift over to off support. But my 5 rankings, of course, starting from 5, I have Ryu Jae Hong. I have for number 4. I didn't forget, Bob. I didn't forget. I have Boombox.
Nice.
Number 3, I have Shaz, and then, as I think everybody except for Bob's list, apparently, I have Bedosin and Jonak as 2 and 1.
Where was Raucus?
Look,
he's not there.
I love Raucus, and I will even go so far as to say, season 2 Raucus redemption arc. You heard it here first, but Houston is a team where so many more kills are taken up by Muma and Coolmat with the additional Linkser one in here. I don't think he's going to have enough of the kill percentage enough to where I would consider putting him in the top 5.
I mean, isn't that an oxymoron? Houston Outlaws and kills?
Well, I mean, it's why Unko almost made my list, actually, because Unko gets a decent size of those Dallas Fuel kills. But as much as I love Raucus and as much as I can appreciate the amount of squats he does, I just can't put him in my top 5.
I think Raucus is going to have a much better year too. A lot of people forget that his father passed
exactly
in stage 1. I mean, that's rough.
And then it didn't help that the entire league immediately went on the "We Hate Raucus" tirade as soon as that happened as well.
See, the good thing is with Bonnie dying to all these self-destructs, that's just going to mean that Raucus is going to have to come in and frag even more.
Exactly.
And Raucus does have the best Twitch emote ever with the big booty emote. I mean, it's awesome.
All right. Well, as for my top 5, mine's actually the bottom of mine is a lot different than what a lot of people have. So at number 5, I put Neko from Toronto Defiant, and a lot of people are seemingly forgetting about Neko. He kind of got replaced by Aim God middle of the season on Boston Uprising, but he was a very good fragger when he was on the Uprising. And Toronto, this is one of those teams that a lot of people have kind of like at that lower, kind of like mid-tier type team, but there's a lot of potential there, and I think they're really going to surprise people. At number 4, this was definitely the toughest choice because I was going to put either San Francisco Shock Flex support. I opted to go for Violet. I'm more confident that Violet will start over Sleepy, which, it's hard to say because, you look at that team and Sleepy was playing with them all the time, but Violet comes in coming from O2 Ardeant or O2 team, depending on, what iteration was, and that was one of the highest regarded Zenyatta players out of Korea. So I'm looking forward to seeing him get the nod. Hopefully, whether or not that's going to pan out, I don't know. But you can interchange Violet and Sleepy in that position. At number 3, I have Shaz from the LA Gladiators. That seems to be a pretty common theme between the three of us. And going from 2 to 1, of course, I have Badosian and Jonak. Now, Badosian and Jonak are very close. It's hard to really gauge whether or not we're going to have the whole enabled Jonak going on with NYXL now that they've added additional firepower. That might actually lower Jonak's fantasy value a little bit now that they have that much more firepower on the lineup. Bringing in Nene, bringing in Flower, assuming, Flower gets back to form here.
Have you seen Jonak's Anna though? Like I've been watching him on stream, and it's unreal.
But yeah, so in regards to maybe like sleeper picks, there's a lot of very talented flex support players in the league. Someone that we didn't bring up is Kodak from the Atlanta Reign. We all saw his performance in the World Cup, and while we don't like to completely judge someone off of one performance, he is definitely known as one of the top Zenyatas coming out of contenders this past season. So if it's, late rounds and he's still available, it might be someone that you guys might want to take a look at. But are there any other maybe sleeper picks that you guys might be looking at snagging there in the later rounds of the drafts?
I'll go first. I have a couple. So Izayaki is someone that I would keep an eye on. Just because you have Custa being the main support. So who's going to be the off support for the LA Valiant? Well, Izayaki. Kariv is not going to be the off support. That's just not going to happen.
We shall see.
Kariv may be the baguette, but won't be the fragger. So you're going to have probably, if they're running goats, you're going to have Kariv probably on Baguette. You're going to have Custa probably on Lucio. That leaves Izayaki on Zenyatta. So I think Izayaki could be a sleeper.
In goats, though, Briggs going to score some points, dude.
Briggs going to score some points, but I'm looking more from, Kariv is going to actually be a DPS player. Drafted as a DPS player. I don't think he's going to be, if I remember correctly, he's not an option to draft as a support. So, you can't, if Kariv is, if you can draft Kariv as a support, you draft him, and you draft him immediately. But, I don't think he's going to be drafted, be able to be drafted that way. So, Izayaki is one, and then another one that me and Totem, we have been versed on how awesome he is, and that's Cruz. I don't know what it is about him, but I just love Cruz. So
he is one of the OGs.
He is one of the OGs, but we've always been like kind of fanboys for Cruz. So like I'm gonna always stick my neck out for him a little. But those were the two that I would think would be sleepers. I don't know. What about you guys?
Before I forget, I just want to say with Totem's earlier pick with Neko, don't forget that Neko is serving a 3-game suspension at the beginning of the season. So if Neko's still a great pick, but you're gonna want to handcuff him and put somebody to start those first 3 games for you. Otherwise, you're gonna just be sitting with an empty slot. As far as my sleeper picks, I'm going to sound like such a homer, even though I don't even live there. But I'm telling you, Raucus is going to fall in this draft. I see your head slap, and but you know I'm right. He's gonna fall in this draft. He has that aura around him where people don't want to touch him right now. And even if he doesn't perform to top 5 level expectations, I still think he's going to be around in later rounds because people are just going to be too scared to even touch him. So I think if you want to go a late round, a number 2 flex support, not a number 1, but a number 2 flex support, head. I would say Raucus would be an interesting pick. It'll be interesting to see what Luffy does with Shanghai, just to see how the kills are distributed across that team. When you have your main DPS taken out and sent over to the Gladiators, it's going to shake up really how kills are distributed. And obviously, I mean, the only player we for sure know in that lineup who we've seen play DPS is Dia, and something tells me he's not going to start very many games. So we'll see. I think Luffy's an interesting pick to look at.
I don't know. I think for my sleepers, I would be looking at main healers that are going to play the majority of the matches. I don't know that I'm going to be jumping on anybody. I don't know. Late, I'm probably going to be looking at all the expansion teams and just throwing a dart at the dartboard.
Eventually, one of them is going to land.
It works so often for me in fantasy football. I feel good about this guy.
Yeah, and it's really hard to tell like what the fantasy value is going to be between Neptuno and Elk because we don't know who's going to be getting the nod. Obviously, Elk is coming in, winning back-to-back championships with Fusion University in Contenders North America, and there's a lot of buzz around him for good reason because he really helped enable that team, and just he has that shot calling capability. Now, if it's just going to be a case of, well, maybe Elk is going to play on the Ana setups and Neptuno's just going to, be in Battle Mercy, that remains to be seen. But it's hard to gauge where exactly those two are going to kind of split off, and it's very similar to Violet and Sleepy for the San Francisco Shock. It could really go either way at this point.
I had a personal experience going to one of the games last year where, of course, they do the signings after every single game. And that day was the Fusion's turn to go out and do signings for the fans afterwards. And we were going through the line, talking to all the players. And one of my good friends who plays with us is a Lucio main, to where I think we looked at his account. He has like 70% of his playtime on Lucio, and then the other 20% on Moira, and then like 10 on Soldier, because that's how console gaming works. But he was telling like, oh, like I love your Lucio play, like it was so cool, like watching you get to do that. And Neptuno just looked at us deadpan, told us like, I hate playing Mercy, it's awful, I want to shoot people, I want to get kills. So I think Neptuno is a good somebody to watch because we have already seen it in games, but he is bloodthirsty and he wants to get those eliminations and he wants to get a piece of that pie. So he's somebody I'm going to be looking at as a late round pick or even a support number 2. So I would encourage you guys to look at him as well. Keep him on your radar.
Dude, so was that stage 3? Because if so, I was there.
Did Boston beat Seoul that day?
I think so. It was before it was like a day or two before the stage 3 finals.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there that day.
So close, Bob. We were so close.
That's crazy.
There's always this upcoming season. All right, well, let's go ahead and shift gears and talk about our top 5 fantasy rankings for the DPS players. All right, now this one I feel like we might have a little bit differential opinions just because there are so many talented DPS coming in, not only as new sign-ins, but also on expansion teams. So Ramses, why don't you go ahead and kick us off with your top 5 DPS players?
Well, I can leave Ed. Ed can rest easy because Jake is not in my top 5 list.
If Jake was on your top 5 list, I'd kick you off the podcast.
The rat meta's coming back. No, so my top 5 list would be number 5 would be Surefour. I know this decay situation. We were talking about even before stream how we're not sure of him, decay, and hydration, how that lineup's going to work. I feel like just because Surefour is the face of the franchise and he is the Gladiators at this point, now that Fisher is gone, they're going to want to keep him front and center. I mean, we know his Widow is still really good. His Zarya is the best out of those 3 players. Especially with how Goats is going to be going into the first stage, I think he's probably going to maintain his top DPS spot. So yeah, for number 5, I have Surefour. Number 4, I have EQO. And number 3, I have Fleta. Number 2, we have Prophet. And then number 1, we have the Michael Jordan of Overwatch League himself, Carpe. I think these Philadelphia DPS are going to be really interesting because there's nobody really to come in and back them up at this point either. I mean, Snillo is a 2-way player, and Shadowburn is now in Paris. So those 2 are going to both be starting every game. So I definitely think those 2 are going to be top 5 for sure.
I like it. Bob, why don't you go ahead and do your top 5 next?
Well, so I had to do a homer. So this one, I don't know that I would recommend, but my number 5 is Effect. And if he's there, he's going to be playing, and he's going to be playing well. My number 4 was actually EQO. I can't believe I rated him number 4 instead of number 1, but
best flex DPS in the league, Bob. That's always what you're saying.
Best DPS in the league, but sometimes the best isn't the best for fantasy, and that's a hard lesson learned for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So yeah, because usually like lots of times in football, one of the best defenses could be the worst in the league, but they just do things to get points, and they're always on the field.
I call that the Blake Bortles effect. Blake Bortles is the worst quarterback of all time. And he's super fantasy relevant. Like, was it 2 years ago? Just a trash tier quarterback. Top 5 fantasy quarterback. What is going on? This is the most infuriating thing of all time.
Ed, did you meet Nathan Peterman? Because I think he has an offer for you as well.
No. Nathan Peterman was never a good fantasy quarterback.
Oh,
he was just a trash quarterback. Like, I think statistically the worst quarterback in the past 10 years. So no, but Blake Bortles was like they couldn't win a game, but he'd still throw for 450 yards, 4 touchdowns. And be like, all right, you know what? I'm going to win my fantasy league because of Blake flipping Bortles.
You got to respect the boat.
No, just no.
So then for number 3, I had Striker. For number 2, I had Fleta because he scored really well all last year, and he's going to be playing, and now he's going to have a main tank. And we saw what happened to Surefour and Hydration when they got a main tank. So I'm thinking Fleta's going to be real good. But then number 1, Carpe.
Who did you have as number 4, Bob? By the way, I'm taking notes on all
EQO.
of this. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm taking notes on all your top 5s, just purely out of spite. So just going on that limb.
Oh, is that what we're doing? Okay, Ed. Well, why don't you go ahead and share your top 5, and then we'll just jab at each one.
All right. So number 5, I have a semi-sleeper. It actually is someone Bob had on his support list. Number 5, I have Kareev because
Nutty.
it's so flexible. The thing is I took he's going to play in every map, regardless of if he's playing support or playing damage. And that's what I took his flexibility into account and put him at number 5. I will say that naming the top 5 in damage was infuriating because I wanted to put 14 people in my top 5. I'm like, okay, Linkster, you know what, Julian Goulian, I will give you this. Fantasy-wise, Linkster was amazing last year in kills. I think he was top 3 in kills.
Did you thank Mr. Dinkser when you had the chance, or did you let that opportunity pass you by?
I let it pass me by because I realized Widow sucks in this meta. Very true. So I have Kareev at number 5. I have EQO at number 4, which I think everyone has. I put Architect at number 3. Okay. That is just someone I think is going to be. He's going to be probably a second, third rounder, but he could be a first round pick and perform just as well as everyone else. And then number 2, Prophet. And can you guys guess who I put number 1? I don't know. I don't know if this can be.
You did put Jake. I'm so happy for you.
Yes,
good job.
Jake is number 1. Number 1 in the booth, not playing actual Overwatch.
He's number 1 in my heart, Ed. That's all that matters.
He's number 1 in being benched for the entire year. No, no, he's tied with Mickey for being benched. Carpe is number 1. So, if Carpe is not a top 3 pick in your fantasy league, the other 3 other people in your league are doing it wrong.
I am disappointed in all of you.
Why? Who did you?
There's one major exclusion from your list, and I will get to it here momentarily.
If it is from Vancouver,
it's not.
Okay.
Okay, so starting at number 5, I did put EQO from the Philadelphia Fusion. Really high kills, and really EQO and Carpe in regards to a 1-2 combo at the DPS line was really the best of Season 1, and I expect similar things in Season 2. Number 4, I was going to put either Surefour or Decay, but since I don't know what Decay's role is going to be as of yet, because there is quite a bit of overlap there, I went with Surefour just because we already have seen how much growth Surefour has already had in Season 1, and I'm expecting him to continue that performance. And you could really tell, he was playing with confidence throughout Season 1, and the further he won in the season, the better he was looking. So I'm expecting that momentum to continue to build and ramp up over time. Number 3, I went with Libero from the New York Excelsior. And this one, I was kind of torn on because when we look at New York this season, they really have 4 flex DPS on this lineup. And there's so much overlap. Now, I would not be surprised if we see triple support lineups out of the DPS of New York Excelsior, where they have Hanzo, Widowmaker, and Ashe, and they could easily do that between any 4 of their DPS players. But Libero, to me, has more flexibility options compared to, say, Bjolby, Pine, as well as Flowers. So that's why I give him the nod over the other DPS for NYXL. But there's a good possibility that they might have a more even rotation this year. So that one is a little bit more questionable. Number 2, I put Carpe from the Philadelphia Fusion. Really, Carpe is one of the most consistent DPS in the league. You can't do any wrong. But my top pick was Prophet from London Spitfire, who everyone just seemed to forget. I don't know.
I thought about him, but
he was my number 2.
I put him 2. He's how did we forget about him?
Because you didn't have him number 1.
Well, that's because he's not.
But he is.
Yeah, he's only really perked up though at the very end. I mean, I don't know if I'd bank on him starting out that way again.
Well, here's the thing, Bob. He was consistent throughout the season, and when Birdring went down, he put that team on his back regardless of the meta shift.
True.
And he does have that flexibility. But that being said, it is London. So depending on how Birdwing is doing, Birdwing does tend to be a little bit more flashy of a play, but we have seen more consistency out of Profit on the DPS line, so that's why I gave him the nod in that regard. Now, kind of like looking at some sleeper picks, there's a lot of good options this year, and there's a lot of stellar DPS players that we didn't even mention.
Right.
So when we talk about the current meta, we are expecting to potentially see a little bit more Sombra. So Dante would be a very good value pick for the Houston Outlaws. And, we haven't really seen a ton of Sombra play in regards to actual Overwatch League. And let me rephrase that. We didn't see a lot of good Sombra play because basically any time Dante was on Sombra, we're like, yep, that's pretty much how it's done.
Yeah, no, I mean Dante is 100% one of my sleepers. I actually have a couple of and you don't want to call them sleepers. Going through this, the biggest advice I can give to people in their fantasy leagues is wait on DPS. Draft your tanks and your support first. Wait on DPS because DPS is so deep that in the 10th round, you're going to get someone who's could be top 5. It's not like it's set in stone for damage. Who's going to be just look at our rankings. It was the most diverse rankings we ever had. Totem, you put Libero. The only reason I put no New York players in my damage top 5 is because they have 6 damage players, and it's just a crapshoot for them.
It's like why don't take San Francisco DPS.
Exactly. But for sleepers, I went with all people we don't know, people that are coming in. So I'm looking at Blase from Boston.
Okay.
I'm looking at Corey from Washington, and I'm looking at Crystal from the Spark. Those are 3 DPS that I'm just like, you know what? If you're looking for a 10th round sleeper in damage, those are someone I would take a flyer on because you know what? They're probably going to be playing a lot and they could really, really shine on the DPS role. But man, it's so deep. It's the damage in Overwatch League. Damage players in the Overwatch League are like quarterbacks in fantasy football. You have your top 2, 3. You have your Carpes and Profits. But then after that, you have a group of 10, 12 that are all in the same group. And you can wait to draft. You could draft a backup tank and a backup support before you draft your second DPS. And you will be 100% fine. That is one thing that if I could stress one thing in drafting your fantasy leagues, wait on damage dealers because you're going to get good ones no matter what. So those were my 3 sleepers. So Crystal, Corey, and Blase.
Right, and it's important.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, it's important to note, too, with Boston, they also do not have backups at the DPS position, and Color Hex is one that is going to be serving suspension for a couple of games, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, I really don't have sleepers for... We would be here all day if I said my sleepers for DPS. I'm going to be taking DPS last... And that's just the way it is. Secure your tanks and supports because they are much more few and far between.
Yeah, unless you get Carpe or Profit. If you can get Carpe or Profit,
any DPS that's for sure going to play every game, I would say be on your top list.
Outside of Carpe and Profit, I don't think any damage dealer is worthy of being drafted in the first 4 rounds.
I really don't either.
Because they're so similar. None of us agreed on 3 through 5. EQO was probably the most similar DPS we all have, but he's not a definitive number 3 DPS. He's someone you could take in the 4th round and be completely content. Get your tanks, get your support, and then go damage, especially in this meta, because I mean, like Bob said, we don't know if they're going to be playing every round because it is a GOATS meta, and we are going to be going into a GOATS meta. Like, certain DPS are going to be playing every single time. And Carpe, you're not going to leave Carpe off the field. You're not going to leave Prophet off the field. But EQO could be left off the field. You know, Jake could be left off the team. Like, you know, yes, got one more Jake dig in there. But, you know, like, when you look at, I mean, Bob, the perfect example is the Dallas Fuel. Who's going to, if you run GOATs with the Dallas Fuel, who's going to be playing? Is Effect even going to be in your starting lineup? Probably.
Well, he'll probably be on
player.
the Brig. You think he'll play Zarya?
I mean, Zarya.
You have Zachary, who's probably going to be playing Brig. You know, like, it's just one of the things you just don't know this.
Yeah, you're right.
Until after you draft. Like, and that is one thing where the preseason is
Community,
not,
what's it called?
yeah, sorry, the preseason All-Star game. Like, if we could see an actual preseason, we could actually do fantasy drafts better because we could see who's going to be in your GOATS comp or so on and so forth. Like, and then I think is where they drop the ball in this preseason. You're going to throw us like gimmick matches and not actually show us what teams are actually going to be running or practicing. And we just don't know any of this stuff. Like, you know, Julian, you were talking earlier about May. Who's going to be playing the May? Like, are they going to
be May?
Yeah. No, Bob. You're done. You're done.
It's the best song ever, Ed. How dare you?
But, like, are they going to be running Snoats? Which is a thing. Shut up. Tom.
Or Dotes. Or Floats.
Yeah, or Jotes with Junkrat, because that's all the Outlaws can play because they can play Jake, and he can only play Junkrat. So, I don't know. Like,
hey, I'm just saying, I got my butt kicked in that tournament this week. We were playing GOATs, and they had a Junk, Hammond, and Sombra, and I couldn't do anything.
Wait, how much were you charging into them?
Not at all. I'm literally standing there with my shield. Junkrat would pop me up in the air. I'd be just up in the air. Sombra would hack me while I'm in the air. I mean, it was horrible. But they were all like 4K players, though, too. So,
but like, this is the thing with damage. You don't know if they're going to play. You don't know if they're going to get a constant playtime. So, wait on damage dealers. It just, I can't stress it enough. So box down.
Well, my sleepers were I think where you're going to get a lot of sleeper picks are going to be teams that, with these expansion teams, specifically players that we don't have a huge read on yet. So I have three really quick ones. Number one would be Happy for the Guang Zhao charge. I think Happy, I mean, not basing everything off of that Seoul Dynasty game that they had, but the guy looks like he's going to be their starting Zarya, and I think there's some potential there. Same goes with Ivy as well for the Toronto Defiant. We hear these rumors and this little subtle hype about him being a hard carry for O2. So, or Metabella, am I wrong? But
that would be a totem question because he knows what team they played on in the Open Division in Korea. And then
there's only one person, that's Krillin.
What high school he played for, and then what grade school he played for as well.
Well, Metagaming does make up the vast majority of that team.
Okay, so Ivy on Metagaming, and then you're going to hate me for this. It's not Jake. Don't worry about it.
If it was Jake, literally, you would be kicked off.
I would have ended the broadcast.
You would have been banned from your own show.
Look, I'm a San Diego boy. I have to support another San Diego boy. So you're going to enter this situation. It's going to be like in the later rounds when you're just throwing darts.
You are setting us up way too much for a horrible sleeper.
It's a pretty horrible sleeper, but in the later rounds, he's going to be scared because you're going to be scared to take him. Defran.
Oh, dude, I was almost gonna say Defran at number 5 for the memes. Defran's in the Overwatch League, dude. Why don't you let him tell why he had us on his list first?
So no, Defran would not make my top 5, 100%. I'm in the same boat as everybody else, where I want to see the body of work first. I want to see him be a little bit more consistent, but I think he's worth taking a flyer on, because worst comes to absolute worst, you can cut him if he's not part of your starting lineup. And I mean, I'm already setting it up. I have a Defran fanboy in my league that I am planning trades for already, because there are people who just have this complex that Defran's going to be number 1 DPS, and you can get that trade bait off of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good point.
I think, though, there's a conversation to be said about DPS players, or just players in general, that I think we're scared to go near, like players that we're too worried to touch. I think it's part of the thing. It's part of the reason why everybody except for Totem was not stoked to take NYXL DPS, just because of we don't know what the starting lineup is going to be. Same with the Shock, whereas the Shock, I think you're only going to really rotate between 3 with Striker, Architect, and Rascal. I think the same goes for me with the Fuel, though, where I don't trust the team really to pull through and have a solid DPS lineup. Not even DPS lineup, I guess, but to not.
That's why Effect was such a good pick, though. It's because if Effect's there, they're going to play him.
Effect's not the one I'm worried about. I think I'm more worried about with Zach, AKM, and Taimu, where that actually ends up going. If Zach actually is going to last the season.
I think they jumble them around a lot, I'm thinking. And I think Effect is your safest DPS pick on Dallas.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Defran, but for my sleeper picks, I actually went with Airster from Atlanta Reign, coming off of Lucky Future Zenith, really one of the promising Chinese DPS out there. Well, granted, Chinese region. He is a South Korean player. Let's just get that straight. But he's projectile, and he also does play Silver 76. Now, granted, if we are seeing 76, there's a pretty good chance Defran will be the one, playing hit scan on that team. But, we have been seeing quite a few iterations of Dive starting to surface again, and we've seen a lot of Somber Pharah, so there's quite a bit of value there for Airster. But outside of that, we pretty much already hammered the other sleeper picks that I was going to say. But all in all, it's pretty much going to be it for tonight. Again, next Tuesday, we will have Matt from High Noon Fantasy on, so next week would be a great time to, ask for, any sort of questions in regard to the scoring system, what all High Noon Fantasy is going to offer. And, we'll have a little bit of fun with the broadcast section on Be Alive, swapping people in and out. So that should be a good time. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. So if you guys want to help us out, one of the best ways to do that is to go leave us a review over on iTunes. We don't have anything review-wise as of yet. Again, it is still pretty early on. But you can just search for us on iTunes, either by, just typing in Overwatch League or Overwatch League Network, or, the actual podcast name, OWL by the numbers, and we will pop up there. But we do have, additional content out there. So, Ramses, why don't you let them know about our Overwatch Recall?
Yes, sir. So, every Sunday, we put out Overwatch Recall, which is a nice, comprehensive, summary's not the right word, but a nice, comprehensive recap of all the different Overwatch content creators and podcasts that are coming out every single week. We have taste for everything from fantasy to actual game improvement to just general topics. So there's an Overwatch podcast for everybody in here. I firmly believe that. And that list comes out every Sunday.
Yeah, it's crazy. We've seen a couple of returning podcasts. I know Junkertown FM just came back. Oversight finally put out a new episode. And we had 29 different podcasts actually release a new episode this past week, which is one of the biggest numbers I've seen since I started doing Overwatch Recall. So it's crazy.
It's the big jump into season 2. Remember when season 1 started? There's tons of podcasts that aren't even here now.
This is also true, Bob. We'll see whether or not we're going to have a sudden, resurgence of fantasy and Overwatch League specific podcasts moving forward. So definitely keep an eye on that. And if you guys find something that's not in our podcast directory, please reach out to me and we will be sure to add that to Overwatch Recall. But Ed, we have a number of different ways how our listeners can get a hold of our show. So why don't you let them know how they can do that?
Okay. Well, you can reach us through email at contact@owlnshow.com. You can also go to our website at www.owlnshow.com. We do have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/c/Overwatch League Network. We are on Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. We are streamed presently on Twitch at twitch.tv/OWLN show. So we are a Twitch affiliate. Help support the show by subscribing to our channel and earn our network emoticon. Our podcast network does stream quite often. So on Mondays, we do the Overwatch League Network, which airs at 7 p.m. Pacific normally. Tuesdays, we will be airing this show, OWL by the Numbers, the fantasy podcast, at 6 p.m. Pacific. Wednesdays, we stream Heroes Never Die, which is the show Totem and I do, and that will be at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then host streams will usually occur Thursdays and Fridays at 7:30 p.m. Pacific. And then we'll host special streams like our fantasy podcast, stuff like that, when it comes up. We are also on Patreon, so at patreon.com/OWL Network. So we recently launched our network's Patreon page for those that want to support our Overwatch network further. Tiers start at just $1 a month. So any support you would want to give us would be much appreciated. Go out there, go to our Patreon page, and help us put out better content. For me, for hosts specifically, you can contact me on Twitter at Nar Overwatch. Totem, where can they find you?
Well, I'm over on Twitter at TumbleDrunkCTR, and if I'm live, it will, of course, be on our podcast network channel at twitch.tv/OWLN show. Ramses, where can our listeners get a hold of you?
Everything for me is at QUEZ_Julian.
All right. And Bob, what about you?
You can find me weekly on the Owl Recap and on Twitter at Blazin_Bob. That's BLAZZIN_BOB.
All right, guys. Well, I do want to thank everyone again for hanging out tonight in our Twitch chat. You've been listening to OWL by the Numbers. I am your host, Emily Drunk, joined by Blazin' Bob, Edinar, and Ramses. And we hope to see you guys back here tomorrow night at 5 p.m. Pacific for our next episode of Heroes Never Die. Guys, have a good night.
Later, guys.
Later.